Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The ring nearly slipped from my hand and clipped her glass. I am Alex and I was 27 that night. My knee hit the edge of the table when I stood. Emily laughed once and grabbed the wobbling water with both hands. Everyone at the nearby tables turned like this was live theater. My hands shook so hard the box lid scraped against the hinge. I heard my own breathing louder than the music around us. Emily watched me with this tight smile that said both hurry and breathe. I dropped to one knee and the room blurred at the edges. In that moment, she was supposed to be my only problem here. "Will you marry me?" The words came out too fast and almost tangled on my tongue. Her eyes filled before her mouth even moved, and that saved me. Yes came out like a gasp, and people around us actually clapped. My face burned while I pushed the ring over her knuckle. The band stuck for a second, then jumped into place on her finger. She held her hand up high and gave that shaky laugh again. From my angle, the stone looked clear and sharp and way above my budget. I told myself it was worth every dollar and every side job. Her fingers trembled and she whispered that this did not feel real yet. A server appeared with champagne and a grin that felt rehearsed but welcome. He asked for a picture and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. She angled the ring toward his phone and told him to take many shots. I watched the band catch the light and something in my chest finally eased. I had no idea how short that feeling would last tonight. After the picture, she dropped her hand to the table and rubbed her thumb across the inside of the band. "You okay?" She nodded but kept tracing that same spot like something already bothered her skin. "Feels a little tight maybe, I misjudged my ring size." She shook her head after saying that as if trying to ignore the thought. I rushed to reassure her because panic is not part of the proposal fantasy. "Metal takes a minute, your hand is just freaking out," I told her. I heard the thin edge of my voice and hated how fake it sounded already. She leaned over and kissed me anyway, tears still on her lashes. For a second I managed to believe my own reassurance, and that scared me later. While she checked the first photos, I turned her hand over and ran my thumb along the band. The underside felt slightly uneven, like a corner had peeled or flaked. Not painful, just wrong, like something rushed and cheap lived under that shine. I pulled my hand back before she noticed and forced a smile across my face. If she felt anything off, she did not say it yet. Plates landed between us and gave me a reason to stare down and breathe. I kept stealing glances at her hand every time she reached for her drink. Sometimes the ring caught the light and flashed, sometimes it looked dull and tired already. She shook her fingers once, like trying to loosen them, and rubbed the skin again. I felt sweat under my collar, and the room suddenly seemed much smaller than before. "Is it weird that my finger feels kind of itchy already?" She held her hand closer to her face and frowned at the base of the ring. There was a faint line there, not thick, just a hint of green shadow. "Maybe it is the lighting, we can check in the car later." I heard myself offering that and knew I sounded like a salesperson on the edge. She pressed her thumb against the mark and rubbed until the skin turned redder. "Stop, you are going to hurt yourself." I reached across and stilled her hand. I tried to make it a joke and asked if she planned to erase the ring already. She smiled at that joke for me, not for the joke itself. "You know I love it, right?" she said, and that sentence landed heavy in my chest. I nodded and looked at the ring again, thinking about the cash I had handed over a few days earlier. 3 paychecks lived on that finger right now, and it suddenly felt like a stranger there. I thought about how proud I had felt when I first saw it and felt a small crack open inside that memory. If anything was wrong with it, then every choice leading here would start to feel stupid. I told myself I was overreacting even while every part of me stayed on alert. A couple from the next table leaned over and asked how long we had been together. Emily answered for both of us, laughing while hiding her hand halfway under the table. I watched her do that and felt my stomach twist because that was not her style. "Congratulations," the stranger said. Then they went back to their meal and left us there with the silence. Emily stared at her plate for a second and then took a long drink instead of speaking. "I think I am going to the restroom real quick," she finally muttered. She slid her chair back and I watched her tuck her hand close to her side. The ring flashed once near the edge of the light and then disappeared with her around the corner. As soon as she was gone, my shoulders dropped and the smile fell off my face. I pulled my phone out and opened He Jeweler app where I had stared at similar rings for weeks. Every picture there looked solid and clean and nothing like the band that had just scraped my thumb. The prongs in the photos were smooth, but on her finger they had felt rough like tiny hooks. I zoomed in on a random listing and checked the metal stamps at the inside of the band. I realized I had never checked for any mark at all on the ring I bought. That thought hit me so hard I locked my phone and stared at the empty chair across from me. Emily came back a minute later, drying her hands on a paper towel and avoiding my eyes at first. "Did it help?" I asked and nodded toward her hand before I could stop myself. She uncurled her fingers and laid her palm on the table like she was bracing for impact. The skin under the band was still faintly discolored and now a little irritated around the edges. She watched my face instead of the ring, and I knew she was checking if I would panic. "Maybe I am allergic to whatever this is," she joked, then her laugh broke halfway. "Do you have any metal allergies?" I asked, and my mouth felt dry again. She shook her head and reminded me she wore jewelry in college without any trouble. That little fact landed like another stone in my stomach, and I had no quick answer. We both fell quiet and just listened to the clink of plates around us for a few seconds. I forced myself to break the silence because if I let it grow, the whole night would die. "Okay, new plan. We eat fast, we celebrate at home, then tomorrow we get the ring checked just in case." I tried to make it sound like a practical decision, not a desperation move. Emily studied me for a long beat, then nodded and reached for her fork again. "If there is something wrong, we will handle it later," she said, and that later echoed in my head. We barely touched the food after that and asked for the check as soon as it felt polite. On the way out, the host shouted congratulations and Emily lifted her hand again for them. The ring glowed for a second under the entry lights, looking perfect while I knew her skin still burned underneath. She squeezed my fingers as we stepped into the parking lot and her grip felt just a little too tight. By the time I opened the car door, I knew this proposal carried a problem bigger than a rash. The ring clicked against the glass when he took it from her. His fingers were quick and practiced and my throat went dry. He leaned closer, brought that little magnifier up, and everything slowed. I watched his expression instead of the ring because that felt safer. Even then I already knew safe was gone. Emily rubbed the base of her finger while he studied the band. The stain had faded overnight, but a faint shadow still lingered. She kept scraping the line with her thumbnail like she could erase it. I wanted to grab her hand and hide it, but I stayed still. If I moved first, it meant I believed something was wrong. He turned the band, looked inside it, then shot me a quick glance. "Where did you purchase this?" His voice sounded casual, but his eyes had that quiet edge. I swallowed and answered too fast, so it came out clipped and weird. "Family handled it," I said, and instantly wished I had lied. "Family, huh?" He rolled the word around like it tasted off in his mouth. Then he slipped the magnifier back into place and peered at the stone. Emily shifted closer to the counter, shoulder brushing my arm hard. She did not say anything, but I felt the question burning there. He pulled out a small tool and tapped the surface once, then twice. The sound was duller than I expected, almost hollow, and that hit me. I had seen those viral clips where jewelers test things for strangers. In those clips, everyone laughs when the diamond passes and they hug. That tap did not sound like those videos, and my stomach tightened. Emily cleared her throat and asked if the band could be resized. Her voice wobbled on the last word, and she pressed her lips together. "That line on my skin freaked me out," she added, forcing a tiny laugh. She slid her hand across the counter and turned it palm up. The red mark around the faint green cast looked worse under bright light. He glanced down at her skin, then back at the ring in his palm. "Metal reactions happen," he muttered, "but not usually this quick." He pulled a small bottle from under the counter and dabbed the band. The liquid sizzled just a bit, then flared a strange color on contact. He watched it change, and his jaw tightened like he had seen this before. "Can I ask who sold this to you?" His question aimed straight at me, not at Emily. "A friend of the family," I answered, and felt heat climb up my neck. He nodded slowly like a medic, hearing a story that made no sense. That nod scared me more than if he had started yelling. He placed the ring on a small tray and pushed it between us. "So this is not what you think it is," he started carefully. "The stone is not a diamond, not even one of the better substi. Tuds. The band is a low-quality alloy with a thin surface layer on top. That layer is already breaking down, which explains her skin reaction." Emily did not move for a second, like someone had hit pause. Then she pulled her hand back off the counter and curled it into a fist. "You mean it is fake?" Her voice was quieter now, and that scared me more than shouting. He exhaled through his nose and gave the smallest nod I have ever hated. "Not costume jewelry exactly," he clarified, "but it is not worth much." He tapped a few keys on his screen and turned it slightly toward us. "Something similar retails for this amount," he added and pointed. The number on the display was barely more than a random dinner out. My brain tried to match that with months of overtime and just stalled. I felt my ears buzzing while Emily stared at that figure in silence. "We just got engaged last night," she finally managed, fingers shaking again. She looked at me for a second, then back at the tray. There was nothing romantic about that ring anymore, it just sat there. I wanted to grab it and throw it somewhere, but I needed answers first. "Is there any way you could be wrong?" I asked, and heard the desperation. He did not even look offended, just tired in a practiced kind of way. "I can run more tests," he said, "but I already know what I am seeing. If this came from a legit jeweler, they owe you a very big apology." The way he emphasized legit hit a raw nerve I had been ignoring. Emily pressed her knuckles against her mouth like she was keeping words inside. My mind jumped straight to the envelope I had passed across my parents' table. That moment now replayed in my head with a completely different soundtrack. I had walked out that day convinced I was responsible and generous. Standing here, I felt like a child who handed over savings to a stranger. "Can you resize it anyway?" she asked, surprising both of us. He hesitated, then shook his head with a small grimace. "If I work on that band, the plating will peel even faster. You would have a bare ring in no time and worse marks on your hand." The thought of her skin blistering under that thing made my chest squeeze. "What would you do if this happened to you?" I asked him quietly. He studied my face for a second, measuring something. "First, I would try to get my money back," he answered. "Then I would buy from someone who could show paperwork before I paid." The word paperwork felt like a slap because I had trusted words instead. Emily looked over at me again, and there was hurt in her eyes now. Not just about the ring, about the whole chain of choices behind it. "We need the receipt," she said, and the pause between words felt heavy. I stared at the tray and realized I had never seen a receipt at all. Suddenly the room felt too warm and the air too thin to breathe easily. He slid the ring back toward us on the tray like he could not wait to be rid of it. "I can give you a written evaluation," he offered, "if you plan to confront someone." Emily nodded at that before I could answer, jaw clenched tight. "That would help," she said, voice flat and focused now. I realized she was already thinking 2 moves ahead while I still scrambled. While he typed, I picked up the ring and turned it in my fingers. Without the proposal haze, it looked small and tired and brutally ordinary. I searched for any stamp inside the band and found only faint scratches. There was no mark, no number, nothing that proved it ever had value. I felt stupid for not checking earlier, but that shame came with teeth. He printed a sheet and slid it across with a practiced gesture. On the page he had written out everything in plain terms: no sugar. Approximate value, material, recommendation to seek refund from seller. Emily folded the paper once and tucked it into her bag without comment. She handled it like evidence while I still treated this like a bad dream. "Congratulations on your engagement anyway," he added, softer now. The word sounded wrong somehow, like a song in the wrong key. Emily gave a polite smile that did not reach anywhere near her eyes. I thanked him automatically, because that is what you do when raised to be polite. Walking toward the door, I knew politeness had just cost me something huge. Once we stepped outside, she stopped and stared straight ahead for a moment. "So your family handled it," she said, repeating my earlier line. Her hands were empty, she was not even looking at the ring anymore. Yeah, I answered because there was nothing else I could offer yet. Every second I delayed the full story, I felt myself shrinking beside her. How much did you give them? She asked, still facing the parking lot. Her voice was steady now, and that steadiness scared me more than anger. I opened my mouth, then closed it because the exact number embarrassed me. Enough that it should not be worth less than a weekly grocery run, I finally muttered. She turned to look at me, and that look burned. More than any rash. She let out a long breath through her nose and shook her head once. Okay, we're going to talk to them, she said, no question in it. Do you trust me on this? The way she framed it made my chest twist because I knew what she meant. Trust me or keep protecting the people who just robbed us. I nodded, although a part of me still scrambled for excuses. Maybe there was a mix-up, maybe they had been tricked too. Those thoughts rushed through my brain like a last defense line. But another part of me replayed old jokes about knowing a guy. Suddenly those jokes did not sound like jokes anymore, just warnings I ignored. We climbed into the car, and the silence between us felt thick. She held the ring in her palm instead of wearing it, fingers curled. I watched it lie there, small and ugly now, resting on her skin. It had gone from promise to problem in less than 24 hours. As I turned the key, I already knew who we were driving toward. Emily blocked the front door with her arm when I grabbed my keys. You are not walking in there alone without telling me the number. Her eyes were steady, and that calm tone scared me more than shouting. I stared at the doorknob instead of her because I already felt guilty. Dragging this out would only make everything worse for both of us. I tried to joke that ignorance might be better for her sanity. She did not laugh, she just crossed her arms and waited. You want me to face them, then you get the full math. I leaned against the wall and finally forced myself to say it. 1,500, all of it in cash, all gone now. Her jaw tightened once, just a small twitch, then she looked away. You handed that much over with no receipt, no record. Hearing it out loud made me wince because yeah, it sounded ridiculous. I told her I trusted them and it was supposed to be special. Even while I said it, I could hear how weak it sounded. She opened her hand and placed the ring there between us. Take it to them, she said, they do not get to hide. She curled my fingers around the band like she was loading a weapon. I half expected her to follow me right then and there. Instead, she stepped back and leaned on the counter like her legs wobbled. You want me there? I asked, hoping she would say yes. If I come, it becomes a full war, she answered after a beat. Right now, I want to see what they tell you alone. Call me after, but do not downplay anything to protect their feelings. That last line hit harder than any number on a paper. You think I am going to cover for them? I asked. She studied my face for a long second and did not rush it. I think you are used to smoothing their messes so nobody explodes. Her voice softened a little, but there was no backtracking in it. Please do not do that with our future, she added, and it stung. I slid the ring into my pocket and felt the cheap weight against my leg. For a second I almost told her we could just eat the loss. We could buy a new ring and never speak about this again. Then I pictured her finger yesterday and the line that refused to fade. There was no way I could pretend that mark had not happened. On the drive over, my mind ran through possible explanations on repeat. Maybe they got scammed, maybe the seller lied, maybe something got switched. I stacked those excuses like sandbags even though I knew they leaked. Every red light felt like one more chance to turn back toward home. I kept going anyway because I did not want to be that coward. Their car was in the driveway when I pulled up. My hands were damp on the wheel and I wiped them on my jeans. You know that feeling before a big exam when you already failed inside? That is exactly where my nerves were by the time I rang the bell. Part of me still expected them to open the door waving champagne. The door swung open and my mom grinned like a game show host. There he is, the future groom, she cheered and threw her arms wide. I stepped inside and the familiar hallway felt different and smaller somehow. She asked how the big night went and reached for my left hand. I pulled it back just a fraction and her smile flickered for a second. She caught the shift and narrowed her eyes, then pushed it away with another laugh. Let me get your father, she chirped, he has been talking about you nonstop. I heard her call into the house and his footsteps answered fast. He appeared with that proud look I had always eaten up before now. You pulled it off. He clapped my shoulder hard, told you I would handle it. My throat closed for a second and I did not answer. Instead, I pulled the ring from my pocket and set it on the table. The cheap metal clicked against the surface and both of them looked down. That is not where I imagined this ring would end up today. The silence that followed felt heavier than any speech they could give. He frowned at the ring like it had misbehaved on its own. "What is with the attitude?" he asked. "You look like some knee died." I took a breath and slid the printed evaluation next to the band. "We had it inspected this morning," I said, and my voice shook once. They read the first lines and my dad's nostrils flared. My mom skimmed the page, then snorted and tossed it back down. These people always talk down on anything they did not sell themselves. She waved her hand like she was shooing a stray dog. "You cannot trust every little report," she added. "They want your business." She still would not actually pick up the ring, and that part bothered me. "Independent jeweler," I answered. "He tested it right in front of us." He listed the metal, the fake stone, the reaction on Emily's hand. I tapped the paper, then the ring, like I was building a case. For once I wanted them to see something they could not spin. Deep down I already knew they would try anyway, they always do. Dad finally grabbed the band and held it up close to his face. "Looks fine to me," he muttered. "That guy is probably exaggerating for money." He peered at the stone, then shrugged and flicked it back onto the table. "So what if it is not museum quality?" he added. "It still shines." That line made my chest feel tight in that old familiar way. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to stay on the one question. "Where is the 1,500 I gave you?" I asked. No cushioning, no jokes, just the number dropped between us. My mom blinked, caught off guard by how directly I threw it out. For a heartbeat nobody breathed, then everything started moving at once. She went defensive first, hands up like I had accused her of theft. "Excuse me," she snapped, "we fronted deposits for your nice evening. We bought food, decorations, helped you look good," she listed as she paced. "That money contributed to family expenses and making you look successful. It is not like we went on vacation with it," she finished sharply. My dad leaned back in his chair and gave a little shrug. "Things got tight with bills," he said, "so we shifted things around. You know how interest piles up," he added. "We had to stop the bleeding." His tone made it sound reasonable, like they had done something noble. My hands curled into fists under the table because I knew it was spin. "So the ring was never worth 1,500, I asked, not even close. He looked annoyed that I kept circling back to the core problem. "We found a bargain," he answered. "That should make you happy, not angry." "A ring is just a symbol," he continued. "You young people obsess over labels." He lifted his eyebrows at me like he had delivered wisdom, not damage. "A bargain that turned her skin the first night," I shot back. They both froze for half a second at that detail. "The jeweler thinks the material could trigger a worse reaction over time." I forced them to meet my eyes, one after the other, no escape. "You put that on her hand with my savings under it." My mom flinched at the word savings, then rolled her eyes like I was dramatic. "You are being hurtful now," she warned, "after everything we do for you. We are drowning in costs and you act like we mugged you." Her voice cracked on that last line, and guilt punched me in the gut. That guilt is how they always reeled me back before this. A part of me wanted to apologize right there and back off. Tell them it was fine, tell Emily we would handle it ourselves. My brain started writing that script automatically because it was familiar. Then I pictured Emily's face in the parking lot asking if I trusted her. That image cut through the old pattern like a blade right across it. I straightened and pushed the evaluation closer again so they had to see it. "I'm not asking for a fight," I started, my voice lower now. "I am asking you to give back the money you did not use correctly. Use your own budget for your cards, do not steal my future." Saying steal made the air shift, like I had broken some family rule. My dad's face darkened in a way I had not seen in years. "Watch how you speak in this house," he warned, tapping the table once. "We are your parents, not some business you audit with paperwork." He jabbed a finger at the evaluation, like it had insulted him personally. "You think your girlfriend put this idea in your head," he added. There it was, the line I had been dreading from the start. Blaming Emily would be their easiest escape hatch here. I felt that old instinct to defend them flare up automatically. For a second, the words almost left my mouth, ready to reassure them. Then I swallowed them because I knew who actually stood beside me now. She did not write that report, I answered. I did. I am also the one who counted out 1,500 on this table. You promised you would secure something real, not play games with discounts. I tapped the spot where I had handed over the envelope months earlier. Funny how that memory now felt like watching someone else get tricked. My mom's shoulders slumped for just a moment, and I caught something like regret. Then she straightened. Ned unfolded her arms, building that wall again fast. We cannot just pull that kind of money out of nowhere, she said. Your timing is impossible, we are behind on everything already. The way she framed it turned my request into an attack on them. I realized then that they were not shocked about the fake ring. They were shocked that I pushed back and asked for anything at all. That realization hurt more than the cheap band or the wasted cash. Because it meant this was not a misunderstanding, it was a choice. They knew the risk and still put it on Emily's hand anyway. I pushed my chair back and it scraped loud enough to make them jump. I will give you some time, I said, but I am not dropping this. Either you pay me back or you face her directly with the truth. I picked up the ring and the paper and shoved both into my pocket. Their silence followed me all the way to the door like a shadow. On the porch, my phone buzzed and Emily's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering, heart pounding. Inside, I could hear my parents talking in low, urgent voices already. Out here, I had one shot to tell her exactly how this went. I answered the call and knew whatever I said next would change everything. Her first word on the phone was, "Well." I stepped off the porch and leaned on the rail. They will not return the money, and they blamed bills. The ring is worthless, and they threw it off like nothing. Silence from her side of the call hit harder than yelling. They used it on their own stuff. My voice cracked on that last word and I hated it. I heard her inhale once, sharp and controlled through the speaker. Okay, she answered, I am coming over right now. My stomach flipped because I knew exactly how that would go. You do not have to, I rushed out fast. They are already defensive and it might explode if you arrive. I can keep pushing and update you after I cool down. She cut me off so clean it shut my mouth instantly. I am not a side note in this story, she replied. If they can spend our savings, they can face me. Her tone was steady, and that scared me more than rage. Stay there, she added, do not walk away from this. The call dropped and I stared at the dark screen. Inside, I could hear drawers slamming like they already regrouped. I walked back in and both of them looked up fast. My mom's eyes were a little red around the edges. Was that Emily, she asked, is she calming down yet? I kept my voice flat and answered that she was coming. The way my dad's jaw twitched told me he hated that. Why would she do that? He pushed his chair back with a scrape that hit my nerves. This is between us and you, he added, not her. I felt that old reflex in my chest start to rise. The one that said keep the peace and smooth everything over. I reminded myself who wore that ring on her skin. She wants to hear you explain this yourselves, I answered slowly. My mom opened her mouth, then shut it like she caught something. Tell her not to start a fight in my house, she muttered. That line flipped something in me I had kept quiet for years. You started it when you spent that money, I snapped. They both stared like I had slapped them across the table. I braced for a lecture, but headlights swept across the window. Emily pulled into the driveway faster than I expected, heart in her throat. I could almost feel the impact before she even knocked. The doorbell rang and my mom wiped her face quickly. She pasted on a bright expression and walked to the entry. Open arms, high voice, like this was some casual visit on Sunday. Emily stepped inside wearing leggings and a sweatshirt, hair pulled back. She did not hug anyone, she just met their eyes one by one. Congratulations again, my mom chirped, we were so happy for you both. Emily glanced at her hand, bare now, then looked at the table. Is that where you kept the ring when he arrived, she asked. Her gaze landed on the empty spot where I had placed it. I pulled it from my pocket and set it there again. She walked straight to the chair opposite them and sat down. She unfolded the jeweler's report and laid it beside the band. Her movements were slow and careful, like she was lining up evidence. Then she rested her hands flat on the surface between them. I stood behind her shoulder because I honestly needed the backup. I want to hear your version of this, she started. No small talk, no warm-up, just straight to the point. You took his savings, bought this, and put it on my body. She tapped the ring once and the sharp sound made my dad flinch. Did you know what you were buying when you agreed to that? My mom gave a nervous laugh that sounded wrong even to her. We did not agree to an interrogation, she replied, we helped. We handled things so he would not stress, that was the idea. She flicked her eyes toward me like she expected me to confirm it. I stayed quiet and felt her irritation building when I did not. Emily did not rise. Her voice, which honestly made it worse. He gave you $1,500 in cash for one purpose only. Her fingers pressed the report so hard the paper curled under them. You ordered something cheap that hurt my skin and called it love. That is not help, that is misuse of trust and money. My dad chuckled once, short and humorless, then leaned forward. You young people obsess over price tags, he scoffed, not meaning. He jabbed a finger toward the ring like that proved his point. A marriage is about commitment, not luxury stones and brand names. His eyes flicked toward me, asking me to back him up. I wanted to slip into that old role and smooth over everything. Tell her it did not matter, tell him I understood the pressure. But then I pictured her hand blotched after the proposal dinner. My chest tightened because that was never supposed to be part of this. I shifted my weight closer to her chair and let the silence stretch. Emily looked at him and did not blink. I do not care about the brand, she replied, I care about honesty. She lifted her hand and showed the faint stain still circling her finger. This did not come from a discount, it came from garbage metal. And she left those words hanging there like smoke he could not wave away. My mom's voice turned sharp and wet at the edges. You make it sound like we tried to hurt you on purpose. We are drowning in expenses, and he knows that too well. We used some of that money to keep things from collapsing. She slammed her palm down once and the ring jumped slightly. So you admit it did not all go to the ring. Emily's tone stayed level, but there was steel underneath. My mom opened her mouth, closed it, then shrugged one shoulder. Things happened, she muttered, we could not predict every emergency last month. Hearing that word used like an excuse made my teeth grind together. I stepped around Emily's chair so they had to look at me. You could have asked, I said, instead of deciding for me. You knew what that money meant when I laid it on this table. You promised you had a real contact and you would take care of it. Now we are standing here with a report that calls it nearly worthless. My dad pointed at Emily without looking away from me. This is exactly what I meant, he growled, she is turning you against us. She exhaled slowly and leaned back without breaking eye contact with him. He is turning himself away because you stole from him, she answered. I just refuse to smile and clap while you pretend nothing happened. That line snapped something inside the room. My mom shook her head and muttered that Emily was ungrateful. We have done everything for him, she insisted, and this is our thanks. Every time you get serious with someone, they start judging us. Her voice broke and she wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Guilt washed over me for half a second because that button still worked. I almost apologized out of reflex just to calm her down. Then I remembered Emily asking me not to minimize anything for their comfort. I also remembered who had spent the last day hiding her shaking hands. If I caved now, I knew exactly what I would lose. Emily leaned toward my mom, softer now but still firm. I am not judging you for having debt, she said. I am judging the decision to fix it with his engagement savings. She tapped the report and then the ring, one after the other. You did not borrow, you took, and hoped we would never notice. My dad scoffed and pushed away from the table like he might stand. Watch your tone in my house, he snapped, you are not family yet. The word yet hit hard because it held a clear threat. Emily's shoulders straightened and she glanced back at me once. That look asked me point blank whose side I was actually on. In that moment I realized this was the line in the sand. Either I backed into my usual corner or I stepped out of it. My voice came out quieter than his, but it carried farther. She is exactly my family, I answered, that is why we are here. If you want a place in that future, you have to fix this. The room went completely still, even the fridge noise faded somehow. My mom stared at me like she did not recognize the person talking. You would cut us off over a little mistake, she whispered. That little mistake cost more than I earn in a month, I replied. And it burned the one person I am supposed to protect first. Emily slid the ring across the table until it stopped near my dad. I am not wearing this again, she said, not for photos or anything. I will not pretend it represents something good when it does not. If you want to be at our wedding, you make this right. Pay him back or own exactly what you chose to do here. My dad's jaw clenched, the muscle there jumping under his skin. You are trying to buy our presents like we are guests, he spat. My mom grabbed his arm and hissed his name under her breath. Emily shook her head once, slow, almost tired now. No, she answered, I am asking. For basic respect before we share vows. My mom finally looked away from me and down at the ring. We cannot just produce 1,500 overnight, she murmured. We will see what we can manage, but no promises right now. She pushed the band back toward me like it carried some infection. You hold on to that for now, she added, we will talk later. Emily did not touch it, she got to her feet instead. We are giving you one chance, she said, we are not begging. Her chair scraped and the sound felt like a door slamming shut. I picked up the report but left the ring sitting there alone. Walking toward the exit, I could feel their eyes on my back like weight. On the way out, my mom called after us, voice shaking. Do not do something you will regret, she pleaded, you will miss us. I paused with my hand on the knob and looked at Emily. She waited, letting me decide which direction I wanted my life to tilt. I opened the door anyway and stepped into whatever came next. I hit the cancel button on the venue invoice and my thumb shook. The confirmation screen popped up, asking if I was absolutely sure. My chest tightened because that deposit had taken months of grinding. Emily watched from the couch, knees pulled up, jaw clenched. I pressed yes and felt something in my stomach drop hard. You really did it. Her voice was quiet, almost surprised, like she had not expected follow through. No more date, no more timeline, just this weird open space. I set the phone face down on the table and stared. We both knew the wedding itself was not the thing on pause. They texted you again, did they? She nodded toward the phone without looking at it. The screen lit up like it heard her and buzzed twice. Group thread from my parents, full of little gray bubbles. I already knew the tone before I even opened it. Show me. She held out her hand and waited, fingers steady, eyes sharp. I hesitated because I knew those messages would be ugly. Protecting her from them felt like instinct and like cowardice. I finally placed the phone in her palm and sat back. She scrolled slowly, lips pressed together, eyes flipping across each line. They called it a misunderstanding and a family hiccup, nothing serious. They wrote that I was blowing things up under her influence. They dropped the word loyalty 3 times in 4 sentences. By the time she reached the end, her breathing had changed. They still think this is about one piece of jewelry. She handed the phone back like it burned. Not about trust, not about using your savings behind your back. I opened my mouth and then closed it because she was right. They were rewriting the story while we were still in it. One message sat at the bottom that I had not opened. If you let her keep you from your own family, you will regret it forever. My mom had added a heart emoji at the end, which almost made it worse. Guilt crawled up my spine on cue because that trick still worked. Part of me wanted to reply right then and smooth it over. Emily watched my face change and leaned forward. I am not making you choose us versus them, she said. I am asking what kind of life you want us to build. One where they can raid our plans whenever things get hard. Or one where they do not get to spend what they did not earn. It sounded harsh when she said it that way, I will admit that. Some old voice in my head whispered that she was being extreme. That they were just struggling, that good kids forgive, that family bends. That same voice had kept me quiet for a long time. I could feel it losing volume, but it was still there. So what now, I asked, because the calendar suddenly felt empty. She picked at the faint mark around her finger and shrugged. I am not walking down an aisle with them smiling in the front row. Not after they took from us, and then called me manipulative. Her eyes shone and she blinked hard until it cleared. You are saying no ceremony at all, unless they pay back everything. My words came out sharper than I intended, and she flinched. I hated hearing myself sound like them, twisting her point around. She took a slow breath and answered anyway. I am saying I will not promise my life in a room they control. That landed. I dropped my head back against the cushion and stared at the ceiling. I used to think I could keep everyone happy if I tried hard enough. Now I could feel the cost of that fantasy in my bones. Every route forward involved someone being furious with me. She slid closer until our shoulders touched. If you tell me you want them there no matter what, I will hear you. She looked straight at me when she said that, and it stung. Because she really meant it, even though it scared her. I realized I was the one who kept avoiding an actual decision. I did not answer right away. Instead, I opened a new browser tab on my phone. I typed out simple engagement rings and filtered by price. This time, I did not hand that choice to anyone else. Emily watched. Without comment, but her fingers curled around my wrist. We ended up at a tiny shop across town that afternoon. No drama, no speeches, just a quiet counter and a tired clerk. I asked up front for something modest that would not wreck our budget. And for proof that whatever we picked would not eat her skin. He raised an eyebrow at that but did not joke about it. He laid out 3 plain bands and one with a small stone. Emily kept going back to the simplest one with a narrow curve. She slipped it on and off, turning her hand, testing the weight. Her face softened in a way I had not seen in days. She did not ask how much it cost before she smiled. We checked the tiny stamp inside the band together with the clerk. He printed a certificate without waiting for us to ask. I paid with my card, not an envelope, not a handshake. Watching the receipt slide out felt stupidly emotional, I will admit. This was not flashy, but at least it was honest. Outside, she held out her hand and waited. "Do it again," she whispered, even though no one else was there. My throat tightened and I slid the new ring into place. Her skin stayed clear, just warm from my fingers. For a second, I let myself enjoy that tiny, uncomplicated win. Back home, my phone lit up with a new message from my parents. They had moved on from guilt to full pressure mode. "Your cousins are asking about dates. We told everyone already. Do not embarrass us." Reading that, I felt anger rise faster than guilt for once. They were planning a party for money they never returned. I started typing a response and erased it 3 times. Everything sounded either too soft or like a nuclear bomb. Emily did not look over my shoulder, she just stayed near. Finally, I put the phone on the table and spoke instead. "I need to be very clear with them, or this never ends." She nodded once, like she had been waiting to hear that line. "So say it," she answered, out loud first, then text it. My hands trembled, but I forced the words out anyway. "If you keep ignoring what you did, you do not get front row seats." Even hearing myself say it out loud felt unreal and huge. I typed slowly, careful with every word. I told them I loved them, but I would not pretend this was small. I wrote that until they paid back the money or at least owned the choice, they were not invited. Not to the ceremony, not to any celebration, not as if nothing happened. I stared at that last line for a long time before sending. The answer came faster than I thought it would. "So that woman has talked you into exiling your own parents. Good luck when she walks away, and we are not there anymore." My chest tightened and that old panic tried to climb up. They knew exactly which bruise to press and they pressed hard. Emily read over my shoulder that time because I did not hide it. She shook her head and laughed once, but there was no humor. "That is not a family message," she said, "that is a threat." She turned my face toward her with one hand. "You know they're wrong about me leaving, right?" I wanted to say yes immediately, but I hesitated for half a second. Not because I doubted her, but because they had spent years planting that fear. "If you walk away from them, you will end up alone." That sentence had lived in the back of my mind since childhood. Dragging it into the light like this made me feel almost dizzy. I swallowed and nodded. "I know you are not going anywhere," I answered. "You are here even while I untangle this mess." She relaxed a little at that and leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat there listening to my phone buzz on the table. I let it go to silence, which for me was a huge shift. "Maybe we put the wedding on hold," she suggested, "just the event, not us. We keep the ring, we keep the commitment, we lose the circus." Her idea hurt and comforted me at the same time. No big day, no photos, but also no performance for people who treated us like a bank. I stared at her hand and the new band that actually fit. I surprised myself with what came out of my mouth next. What if we do something tiny instead, just us and maybe one friend? We sign papers, share vows, make it real on purpose. Then, if they ever actually fix this, we can throw a party later. Her eyes widened because that was not an answer she expected from me. You would do that without them, she asked, searching my face. A month ago, I would have said absolutely not. I would have bent, made excuses, twisted myself into knots. Now I just felt tired of being the one who always swallowed it. I took her hand and squeezed until she looked convinced. I want my marriage to start with honesty, not a lie in the front row. If that means they stay home, that is on them, not you. Saying that out loud shook something loose in my chest. It felt like choosing a door and stepping through, finally. No guarantees, no safety net, just us and whatever comes. Later that night she went to shower and I sat alone. I picked up the fake ring from the drawer where I had thrown it earlier. I turned it between my fingers and watched the dull stone catch nothing. I almost tossed it in the trash and stopped at the last second. Instead, I dropped it in a box in the closet and shut the lid hard. The circle on her finger is almost gone now when I look. You would not notice it if you met us today on the street. Inside me, though, it is still there, as a kind of burn mark. A reminder of the exact moment I realized my parents would choose their comfort over my future. So here is my question to you strangers: if I block their numbers before we ever set a new date, am I overreacting or just very late to finally growing up?